You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com, and I hope you're ready for some serious brain bleed. I'm already bleeding from the brain, clearly, this Monday morning. Thanks for tuning in the show, folks. We certainly appreciate you coming by. We have an amazing multi-book author on the show. He's written a bunch of brilliant books, and we're going to be talking to him today about some of his books. Byron Reese, who has written the newest book coming out August 23rd, 2022, Stories, Dice, and Rocks That Think: How Humans Learn to See the Future and Shape It. He's written a number of amazing books, and we'll be talking to him about it. In the meantime, remember, the Chris Voss Show is the family that loves you. It doesn't judge you. It just turns 13 years old this month. The Chris Voss Show is 13 years old. In fact, our YouTube channel is, I think, 19 years old, although we didn't really use it much for the first few years. But we just got a notification of it for YouTube the other day. It's like, you're 19 years old. And so fun is fun, man. Go check out all the videos over there, youtube.com/Chris Voss, everything at ChrisVossShow.com, ChrisVossLeadershipInstitute.com, all of our big groups on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all those crazy places the kids are playing. Check out and follow those places. Refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go give us a 5-star review on iTunes. He is an amazing multi-book author, as I mentioned. The new book, of course, you can pre-order, Stories, Dice, and Rocks That Think: How Humans Learn to See the Future and Shape It, August 23rd, 2022. You can pre-order that baby up and see it coming out here soon. Byron Reese is an Austin-based entrepreneur with a quarter-century experience building and running technology companies. He is a recognized authority on AI and holds a number of technology patents. In addition, he is a futurist with a strong conviction that technology will help bring about a new golden age of humanity. He gives talks around the world about how technology is changing work, education, and culture. He's the author of 4 books on technology. His most recent was described by the New York Times as entertaining and engaging. Welcome to the show, Byron. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you as well. Give us your .com so people can find you on the internet, please.
I'm the easiest person in the world to find. I'm Byron Reese everywhere. So I'm ByronReese.com, Byron Reese on Twitter. My email address, ByronReese@gmail.com.
There you go. That's easy to do. So what motivated you want to write this book?
Well, I was getting an eye exam, and my eye doctor asked me a question, and it's a very straightforward question. And he said, "Why? Where are the, if we're all that, like we're all smart, why are the other animals that are coming up and that are going to like catch up with us? Like, why is there us and like everything else?" And so I got really interested in that question about how are people different than animals? And that was what I started writing it on.
Wait, people are different than animals? Have you seen us lately? No.
Well, there are, I mean, we obviously have animal bodies, but if you think about some animal that's supposed to be all smart, like, a dolphin or something, and then you say, well, they really done, like, they don't have the internet. I don't even have telegraphs. They don't have postal system. Like, they're writing. Like, what have they been doing all this time? And the short answer is humans are different because we believe in these two things that don't really exist, the future and the past. Like, we know. So we accumulate knowledge, and it piles up over time. Whereas you think about a beaver or something, it makes the same dam that it was making 5,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago. And that's just very different than how we do things.
Maybe animals are just freaking lazy. I'm just kidding. Hi, folks. Chris Voss here with a little station break. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. We'll resume here in a second. I'd like to invite you to come to my coaching speaking and training courses website. You can also see our new podcast over there at chrisvossleadershipinstitute.com. Over there, you can find all the different stuff that we do for speaking engagements if you'd like to hire me, training courses that we offer, and coaching for leadership, management, entrepreneurism, podcasting, corporate stuff. With over 35 years of experience in business and running companies as CEO, I think I can offer a wonderful breadth of information and knowledge to you, or anyone that you want to invite me to for your company. Thanks for tuning in. We certainly appreciate you listening to the show, and be sure to check out chrisvossleadershipinstitute.com. Now back to the show. So, is it because we have some sort of consciousness that those animals don't, or is that not true?
Oh, I think that could very easily be part of it. I mean,
of course, we assume they're not conscious. For all I know, they're sitting around thinking about shit all day long.
Yeah, but I mean, let me back it up and start 2 million years ago. Where all stories begin. There was this creature known as Homo Erectus, which is supposed to be some ancestor of ours, and Erectus lived for like 1.5 million years. And Erectus just had one tool called an Acheulean hand axe. Looks like a big arrowhead. It's kind of a curved bottom. And the thing about it is, those are found all over Asia, Africa, and Europe. Because Erectus lived for 80,000 generations, there are so many of these things, you could buy one on eBay for like $100. Tool used 1 million years ago. Now, the punchline of the story is that over the 1.5 million years, they did never change. If I showed you 2 million years apart, said which one's older, you'd have a hard time. I mean, even experts date them plus or minus 500,000 years. And so you think, well, wait a minute, it took us 3 generations to get from Kitty Hawk to the moon. How did they go 80,000 generations and not improve it any? And even more to the point, even if they hadn't intended to improve it, if they were just like copying their parents' hand axes, they would have drifted. And the ones in Asia would have looked different eventually. The ones in Africa wouldn't see that. But the big punchline of the story is, it's likely that was not a cultural object or a piece of technology. That's just something Erectus was hard-coded to know how to build, the way a bird would build the same nest. The only nest it knows how to build. So Erectus is sitting there chipping away at this thing, making it, but doesn't even really know what it's doing, any more than the beaver knows why it's building a dam. And the beavers don't know why they're building dams, because if you put a recording of running water in the middle of a field and a beaver just walked by, that beaver's going to build a dam over it. Like, that's all it's doing. And that's all Erectus did. And then, I'm getting to the punchline here, and then somehow 60, 70,000 years ago, something very strange happened to us. Like we got bitten by a radioactive spider or something, because like overnight, you get beautiful cave art where you had none before. You get musical instruments where we have no evidence of them. You get representative art, like carved figures where there are none, just like that. And so something happened, and it could very easily be, so probably gave us a language, and language is, the main purpose of language is not to communicate, but to think, you think in language. And there's a beautiful quote in the book from Helen Keller, who talks about what her life was like before her teacher came. She said she didn't even realize she was a thing that was different than the universe.
Oh, okay.
She was not conscious. She didn't understand that there was time passing. She was just in this like state. And that's what Erectus, I think, was. And then all of a sudden, pow, we get all these powers. And one of them could very well be that we experience the universe, that we are conscious. And it could be that consciousness that was I wrote a whole book on whether computers could be conscious or not. Been down that path, and it could be. But as you point out, it's kind of the unknowable thing.
So I can't let this joke slide. I thought Homo Erectus was a OnlyFans channel. I just can't waste that joke. It's too good. So were we dumb like most animals, are you saying, for a long time, where we kept doing the same thing over and over again, and then somewhere in there, I think the story goes, aliens stepped in and awakened our brains or something? No.
It's funny you say that, because when I was writing the book, people would always jokingly make that remark.
It's a great joke.
It's a fair one to make, because what happened is so dramatic, it invites speculation that crazy. And so something happened to us. And then all of a sudden, us. And so the reason there are no Bronze Age beavers or Iron Age iguanas or pre-industrial prairie dogs or any of that is because the spider didn't bite them. They're just Erectus. They're just building their dam or doing whatever they want, and that's your story. So
yeah. So does it become like Moore's law, where basically once we awaken, we just, you mentioned the thing with Kitty Hawk and flying, and yeah, it's amazing how quickly we, now we're in space and we're on Mars. Does it become Moore's law where we just slowly over time start, doubling, tripling, and,
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The thing about Moore's law that we discovered was that all technology seems to behave that same way. It doubles on a periodic basis. It may not be every 2 years, maybe every 100 years, or every 5 years, or every 9 minutes, or whatever, but it doubles on a periodic basis. It appears that the complexity of life doubles every 127 million years. Which means if you graph it backwards from us, life formed 6-7 billion years ago, which is pretty cool since the Earth is only about 4.5 billion years.
There you go.
Almost certainly, if it wasn't aliens, we could very easily have had it. Could have come here on a. We know that microbes can survive in the vacuum of space. There was we left a camera on the moon for 2 years, and when they took the lens cap off, there was stuff under the live. So it could be that came down and was, the seed that launched all of this.
Yeah, the spider that bit us is kind of interesting sort of analogy. Is it possible that our brain just, I don't know, somehow evolved to a point of consciousness? I mean, I sometimes, you hear the theory that people say, well, snakes don't sit around and contemplate the universe and their existence. And, if there's a snake god, they imagine that there's a god of their own image, which is the most narcissistic sort of concept anyway, when I think about it. I think about if you look at the universe and you go, whoever built this thing and then the math and everything else, he really wasn't a petty person who was sitting around as a narcissist, concerned about his navel. If there was a creator, I should say. I'm an atheist. So whoever built this had to be, pretty darn smart intelligence, because we have no concept of building a universe or how to do it. I think we have we're starting to have the blueprint and the math, but the fact we all can't float in space or whatever he floats in or she floats in or it floats in. Let's put it that way. Again, it's narcissistic to think that it's a he or she. For all we know, it's, whatever. I think I'm off on the wrong tangent, and I'm just going to keep running with it. But no, I mean, how do we, do you think animals are conscious? I think that's the question I'm trying to set up in a joke.
So the thing about, I'll answer that very directly. But the thing about consciousness that's so vexing to people is not that we don't understand it, because there's a lot of things in science we don't understand, and that's not no surprise. The thing about consciousness is we don't actually have an understanding of reality where matter can have an experience. A thermometer can measure temperature, but you can feel warmth, and you and that thermometer are made of the same elements. And so that's the difference. It's the experience of that feeling of warmth. And so we don't know why matter can even do that. And so
okay. We don't know why the thermometer can sense temperature. Is that what you see when you're thermometer or me?
We don't know why we can experience warmth, and the thermometer can only measure temperature. People say we don't know what consciousness is, but we actually know exactly what it is. It is your experience of the universe. And, you're built in such a way that you have all of these senses that you experience, and you have a self and it experiences these things. And we just don't know how a matter can do that. Like, you're made out of 30 different elements. A smartphone's made out of 60. So, so the question is, but why are you able to feel warmth and happiness and joy and all that? So we have minds, and I think if we have minds, then that might be the source. So to answer your question, I think animals are conscious. I mean, again, everybody guesses. I would assume so, because I do believe they can feel pain. And if they can feel pain, they're experiencing something. And
that makes sense.
Then they're conscious.
That makes sense. Or, I mean, could it just be reaction? I mean, the body is like...
It could be.
Body has
until the 1990s, until the 1990s, standard procedure for veterinarians in the United States was to operate on dogs and cats without anesthesia because they can't feel it. They may be screaming in agony, but it's just some kind of reaction. That was the argument. Similarly, by the way, we did open heart surgery on babies with no anesthesia until the late 90s. And I'm not saying the 1890s, the 1990s. We were still operating on babies without anesthesia. So we didn't feel like they had a neural development that would allow them to feel pain. So even if they're screaming, that don't really hurt. It's an easy thing to say, but if you've got to err on one side or the other, you always want to err on not torturing things.
Yeah.
If it comes down to I don't know. Okay, I'll go with that no torture option.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, wow, that's that gave me the creepy jeebies. You say that animals are immortal. What's that about?
Well, I mentioned that we learned about the future in the past, and they're not real things. And the only thing that exists in the universe is this moment, and the future and the past don't. And yet we live in them, right? We're always thinking a minute ahead. Oh, I'll do that. I'll get over in traffic. I'll take that exit. Then I'll swing by here and I'll pick that up. Like we make plans. And but the double side of that sword is that we also know there'll be a future where we are not in it, that we will die. There's no evidence that animals have an understanding of the future. In fact, I shouldn't even say it that way. This is a well-studied thing. And you may get a couple of animals that may have a very limited few-hour future view, maybe, but they're not going to invest in a 401k or anything. They don't think in time. So if you don't know that there's a future, then you don't know there's a future without you. So you don't know you're going to die. So I don't think animals know they're going to die. Why would they? Why would they? That's not even a...
I've had a few Nigerian snakes send me Google invites for calendar. That's a joke. So you talk about how our lives are so full of technology compared to, say, dolphins. I guess dolphins don't have a Steve Jobs. Is that what separates us from them? Is our ability to, develop and scale technology?
Sort of, I think, sort of. I mean, if you were to drop you on a desert island, you would probably do okay. I assume you watched a few episodes of Mythbusters and maybe some Gilligan's Island, and
I'd be screwed unless there was coffee. Yeah.
And you would be actually okay. You could build a lean-to and all that. But if you could imagine a real Tarzan, a real baby that was born in the woods and didn't have our culture, and drop them on a desert island, well, they wouldn't. They'd be starting over. And so what I think makes us special is we're born into a long sequence of we have a lot of history behind us. We're born into that. And so I was born into more culture than Leonardo da Vinci was, because I had everything up to Leonardo and everything after it. I was born into more culture than Marcus Aurelius, because I have all of that. And so our stuff accumulates and the dolphins don't. So that's the setup of the book, was that we learned how to see the future, and then we learned to tell ourselves these stories, and the stories are not once upon a time. The stories are how we plan and navigate life, and only much later did we start articulating them. But once we could see the future and know there was a future, then the question was, how can we predict it? And that's the second part of the book, which is nice. That's when we learned about probability.
There you go. You mentioned earlier that we're made up of, I think, what was it, 30 elements, I think it was? I'm actually 31 elements. And I know where we're conscious. The 31th element is coffee, and coffee is the reason we're conscious, because without it, I'm not conscious.
Well, everybody, I'm sure, heard the old song that says the Enlightenment happened because we went from drinking beer all day in pubs to drinking coffee, and that was the Enlightenment.
Yeah.
But there is a flip side to that, though, which are counties in the United States that had been wet counties where you could buy alcohol before Prohibition. Then when Prohibition hit, the number of new patents coming out of those counties was 14% less than it had been.
Wow.
So it sounds like you need a both. You got to have the pick-me-up, and then you got to have the, just be just lit enough to invent something like, I know, I'll make a whatever.
Yeah, there you go. So you say we're at the dawn of Act 3. What? I missed the first two acts then.
Act 1 is
late to the show.
Act 1 is stories. That's where we learn to imagine and visualize the future and tell that story. Act 2 is about probability. And it is something. Can I show a visual aid?
Please do.
So the question for predicting the future is what determines what's going to happen in the future?
Mm-hmm.
And there were all these different theories. It's fate. It's will.
It was on my vision board, right? I'm like, what's
what we
that?
didn't know is that it's this that determines the future. So you may have seen these before. I'm about to flip it, and all these BBs are going to start falling. And when they fall, they get a piece of plastic, and they're going to go to one side or the other.
So let's describe this because the podcast is largely audio, and YouTube can see this.
This will be lost on people. Basically, every time you flip that Galton board down, all these BBs fall and they bounce randomly, but they always form a normal curve at the bottom, a bell curve.
Okay, so there's a bell curve at the bottom. What's that device called again?
It's called a Galton box after Galton, who Galton, yeah. And so every time you flip it, you get that bell curve over and over. I mean, if you ever flip that thing and you get a big U, it's like world's going to end tomorrow, or go buy a lottery ticket. Like, the universe does not behave like that. And what we learned is that there's predictability. There's predictability and randomness, and you would never have assumed that. You know, why is it that I mentioned the book year before last, there were 166 workplace deaths from electrocution, and the next year there were 161. Why would it be that it's the same every year? Why would it be that? And the reason is because in order to electrocute yourself, you have to do like 10 things wrong. It has to be hot, and then you have to not check it, and then you have to touch it. And that's that bead bouncing to the right every step of the way. And every time you flip it, you're going to get 150, 175, 180 of them over there. And that's it. That's what determines our reality, is largely that falling of those balls. But luckily, there's predictability in it. So that's back to, we were like, hey, cool to be able to imagine the future. Can we predict it? And that's when we invented probability. That was done, these two guys writing letters trying to solve a math problem that you'd give a sixth grader today. In any case, that brings us to Act 3, which has started in 1953, when we booted up the first transistor computer. Because what happened is we developed a science for seeing the future called probability, but we had to do it with paper and pencil. Like, that's all we had. And we built the modern world on being able to make predictions with those tools, but it didn't scale well. So we built machines to do our thinking for us, and those are the rocks to think. Silicon chips, of course, being rocks and the kind of thing. And that's what Act 3 is. That's what we're using technology for. And the reason it's more than it sounds like. Yeah, the reason that is such a big deal is because for billions of years, the only place we knew how to write information was in our DNA. Every creature in the world, all they could do is write information in their DNA. And it took a long time to write something new. Then all of a sudden, we got language 70, 80,000 years ago, and our DNA expanded to be what was in our head. And then I could say, hey, Chris, don't eat those purple berries. And that doesn't take 10,000 years to learn. You were like, okay, I won't eat them. And then you can pass that mutation to everybody instantly. Now, what's important, what's cool, is that we now have writing, and now we have everything that's ever been written is now the DNA of our planet. A man named Leonard Reed wrote an essay a while back called I, Pencil. I don't know if you've heard of this. He points out nobody knows how to make a pencil. There's not a person on the earth that knows every step of making a pencil. Nobody who can mine the ore and make the steel and bend it in the ferrule and get the yellow paint, and nobody. And yet pencils get made. And so the question is, who makes the pencils? Who knows how to make the pencils? I'd say it's a superorganism called Agora of humans. Superorganism of humans called Agora. And Agora knows how to make pencils. And more importantly, Agora knows how to make smartphones. So Agora is doing, our DNA now is distributed around the planet. It's in written form, like the DNA in your body. Most of it's junk DNA, but there's a lot of, good stuff in it too. And that's what runs our world, is this new DNA we have. And that is computers, which not only can process data quickly, but they can collect information as well. And that's it. You see, this is short, don't worry. But for the longest time, humanity has been hindered by the fact we don't have a collective memory. So you can learn something your whole life and know it, and then you die and it's gone. Or maybe you taught one person and they died and it's gone. And so we never could accumulate our knowledge. We're, like the dolphin, we couldn't accumulate it. And then all of a sudden we could. And that made, I think, all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Was it because we started storing information? I mean, for a long time we had historians that were griots that would, keep a verbal mental history, and then we started writing it down.
What our ultimate goal is now, the ultimate direction, this may not be anybody's goal, I don't know, but imagine if you could record every single thing that happened. Everything. I mean, everything. Every word you say, everywhere you go, every breath you take, everything your eye tracks to, what happens to your pupils when you see it. We're building that world because we all want all these little pieces of it. Like, if they made a skillet that could detect botulism or E. coli, I'd buy that skillet. I don't want to get E. coli. But the skillet is therefore recording everything that it was ever made in it. And then if my silverware could keep track of what I eat and the vitamins in it, so it can tell me what I need to take or whatever, I'm going to take that. So slowly we're building all the data. We're getting all the data of 8 billion lives. And then we're going to mine that data. And then that is our collective memory as a planet. That is our collective wisdom. And now every mistake you make will be the data that helps somebody else down the road. And every person in the future will be smarter, will be wiser than the wisest person who ever lived, because they're going to have billions of pieces of life experience to draw on.
So now you've made me realize that all this tracking of data that we do through technology is really based upon a song about stalking by the Police and Sting. Every move you make.
Basically, that's right. Record it all.
Thanks, Sting. Way to fucking go. Let's touch more on this Agora, because I want to flush this out a little bit. Agora, I didn't mean to put an N in there. Agora is it a collaboration? Is it a concept of idea or a real creature?
It's one of three things. It may just be a metaphor.
Is it all three things or three things?
Well, I don't think so. It's either a metaphor, a useful way to understand the division of labor, or a system, like a car, a system that can break, or it's an actual bona fide living creature. It's alive. The notion of a superorganism is that, you have something like bees, and your average bee isn't very smart, but bees live in these colonies, and the colonies are smarter than any bee. And the colony takes on different attributes than any of the bees. For instance, bees are cold-blooded. They don't regulate their body temperature. Beehives are warm-blooded. They're held at 97 degrees by the bees, so they're warm-blooded entities. Likewise, you're an emergent entity, right? Because none of your cells knows about you. If I take you apart a cell at a time and put every one of those cells in a petri dish, they can live on, but you would vanish. Like, are you ever even there? Like, what are you? What is it that you are that is different than the sum of all of your cells? And that you are a superorganism. And so all humans who are connected in any way with common culture or common in any way are part of this big superorganism of people. It's nothing mystical or anything like that. It is how a beehive is smarter than any bee. It's a collection of humans.
Okay.
And has this emergent property that it makes smartphones, and they're cheap, right? Like Agora and the Agora, by the way, was in ancient Greece. It was like the part of the town where everything happened. It was the market. It was the debate society. It was they used to, like in Assyria, they used to bring all the sick people and just set them down near the entrance. And when you're walking in, everybody's supposed to yell out their symptoms. And then you're like, oh, I had that once. And then you go over and talk to that person. And it's basically like posting your symptoms on a forum and hoping somebody says, oh, I did that too. So everything's happening in the Agora.
Yeah.
energy of humans.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, is what the next book is about. It's just about
Awesome.
Agora. This book leads into Agora, but just
that's what I do. I post my monkeypox pictures, and that's how I found out I had monkeypox on social media. I'm going to put what was that term? Super organism.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm putting that on my Tinder profile on LinkedIn. That's my new title on LinkedIn and Tinder. It's probably going to get more dates, especially when I put super in organism. The chicks dig that. I hear. The chicks dig that. So we'll do that. What is your thoughts on, because you've written books about AI, you talk about AI. What's your thought on that whole Google thing, the kerfuffle? What age do I live in? I've been listening to Biden too much. I love Biden. The kerfuffle from Google, where that one engineer dude who wears a top hat, actually, if you see his photos, good for him. He looks if he had one of those long cigars that women used to use in the 60s, he'd look like the guy from Batman. What was his name? The Penguin. Yeah. He's a fine fellow. I don't mean to be that way, but he does have pictures.
I don't know much about the Penguin's past.
Well, yeah, I don't, clearly. I was getting laid instead of reading comic books. That's a joke, folks. So what's your take on him declaring that Google's systems, their AI that they're building, has become conscious and is cooking up Skynet and will deliver Terminators next year or something? I don't know.
I used to host this podcast called Voices in AI, and I have 120 guests on it. And I'm fortunate that we live in a time when you still get access to a lot of people who were in early, the big brain. It's just wonderful. And what I like to do is ask them all the same set of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them I would ask them all is, do you believe we can make general intelligence? Do you think we can make general intelligence? And 96% said yes. And then I would say, but you agree we don't know how to, right?
Now, what's general intelligence? Is there, what is that?
It's artificial intelligence. It's an unfortunate word because it means two unrelated things. It's like the word pool. Does that mean like a game pool or a swimming pool? It's like they're different things. So we use AI for these two different things. And one of them is narrow AI. It's what we know how to do now. It's a real simple technology where you take a bunch of data and you look for patterns in it and you make projections in the future about those from those patterns. That's your spam filter, and that's how you get routed through traffic, and that's great, and that works. But then there's this hypothesized form of AI called general intelligence, and that's an AI like you and I. That is C-3PO, that is Commander Data, that is Ex Machina, that is her from the Joaquin Phoenix movie. That is general intelligence. And so when you hear people say, oh, AI is going to kill us all or whatever, they're not talking about your spam filter turning on you. They're talking about this hypothesized other kind of intelligence. Now, we don't know how to make it. And that's what was claimed, that we were almost there. Now, what's important, though, is to understand that 96% of people of AI experts believe we can make it, but they would all agree we don't know how. And so you say, well, why are you so sure we can make it? And their answer is because we are machines with general intelligence. We are machines. And so their belief is based on a core belief that people are machines. And if, in fact, we are machines, if that is true, then someday we'll build a mechanical human. And then 2 years later, it'll be twice as good, and 2 years later, it'll be twice as good. I don't believe people are machines. And I don't even think you have to go to the soul or anything like that to make the argument that there's something about people that cannot be reproduced in a fab. If there is, then general intelligence is possible. So impossible. And I'm in that camp. It's impossible. You cannot make general intelligence. It will never happen. It will never happen.
Yeah. I've seen humans. There's no general intelligence. What is that line from George Carlin? 50% of people are dumber than average. So there's that. And it's kind of interesting. You mentioned earlier the thing where people are getting shocked by electricity. I always just thought that was Darwinism. There's that bell curve of enough people are dumb enough amongst us to get themselves electrocuted and killed. I imagine I'd be interested to know how many of those people said, "Hold my beer, watch this," before that electricity killed them.
Yeah.
There should be a survey. Someone should conduct some sort of university grant for that.
The shocking thing about that curve is how many things in life follow it. If I were to graph, I don't know. I mean, suicide methods or something. It would follow that from year to year. It would follow that. It would all things like that. Where
I have a dumb question. Shouldn't the amount of people go up based upon the fact that we have more people on the planet? Like we're hitting 8 billion people right now because people won't stop having kids in Utah or something, in Florida. I don't know. I mean, shouldn't the number go up because we're increasing, the George Carlin 50% axis of more stupid people? How come it stays the same if we have more population? These are questions. Your third book. Your
different time. Like if I were automotive accidents by day, there are in the United States 36,500 people die of automobile accidents every year. And if I looked at last year versus year before last, it's going to be very close like that, because again, it's that bell curve. It's something had to bounce that many times to the right for somebody to die. But you're right. If you compare it to 20 years ago or 20 years in the future, it's different because the populations are different. So I would always pick adjacent years because that's apples to apples. And then you have to say, well, why would it stay the same? That's really strange.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I can accept there's a certain amount of, Darwinistic as a comedy, but there's a certain amount of people that experience enough stuff that they're going to happen. Just odds of, even police will tell you an accident isn't truly an accident. It's a series of bad decisions people make. And unfortunately, it ends up involving other people. It's kind of like when when two parents get together on New Year's Eve and they've been drinking too much, or two singles, and then there's an accident that happens. It's not really an accident, which might make half my audience feel better. But that's a joke, folks. Your parents did plan you. Don't worry. It's okay. You'll be fine. See a psychiatrist. Anything more we want to touch out or tease out, Reese, on your new book?
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Anything you want to touch on or tease out more on your book as we go out?
No,
we've covered it all. There you guys goes. So give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs. Your .com so people can find you on the interweb. Byron?
Our audio's garbled.
Okay. If you could give me your .com so we can find you on the interweb, please.
Yeah, I'm the world's easiest guy to find. I'm Byron Reese everywhere. ByronReese.com, Byron Reese Gmail, Byron Reese on Twitter.
There you go. Order up the book, folks. You'll find it wherever fine books are sold, but stay out of those alleyway bookstores because you'll need a tetanus shot. Stories, dice, and rocks that think how humans learn to see the future and shape it. August 23rd, 2022. Also check out his other books. So how many other books do you have, Byron?
That are published 4.
4, and another one in the works. So you're prolific, and they'll just keep coming. Thank you very much, Byron, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
I had a great time. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to my audience for tuning in. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss. See everywhere we are on the interwebs, the big LinkedIn newsletter, the big LinkedIn group, and everything we do over there. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.